Well, I've got most of the work done on the pedestal and the legs. I want to start working on the top. I pulled some wood out of my wood pile. The top is going to be 48 or 50 inches. I haven't really decided all that yet. I'm pretty sure it's going to be 50. It's going to depend on this wood here. I've got to lay all this out, figure out how I'm going to cut this so that when I mill it out, I'll get rid of these knots and also some of the sapwood. This is rough lumber. It's in pretty bad shape, but I know I can get it down to where I need it to be. So let's get started on that. So as you can see, I've got the boards laid out. I've marked what sections are going to be which. There's going to be 5 sections on each board, or on each half. Should give me over 50 inches width and length. After I've cut the boards with a small circular saw, you can see how these lay out. There's going to be the gap in the middle. So there's a little bit of method to my madness, and I'm very confident that this top will come together very well. I've got the joiner set up to take a light pass, a 32nd of an inch. What I'll do is I'll take each board and just give it a run over one face until I get it flat. And that gives me a reference edge to use when I put it through the thickness. One side flat through the joiner. I need to put them all through the thickness plane. I've got the thickest board, which is actually the first one I did on top. I'm just going to start running these through on that edge and get a nice flat face on that side. I want to keep these boards as thick as possible. After I've got my board's thickness plane, I've got 2 sides or 2 faces square to one another. What I want to do is I want to joint one edge. I like to bring this out so I'm not using the full width of the fence or the table. I also want to make sure that I'm perfectly square to that fence before I start joining. And it appears that I am, so ready to go. Milled down to the final thickness, rough length, and this is going to be one of the halves. I've got the boards laid bottom side up. What I need to do now is mark out the rough diameter of this, and I'm going to mark some holes for some biscuits. Let me show you how I do that. Alright, well, I've got the boards, like I said, laid out, and I just made a very crude trammel here. I need to mark out about where the middle of this board is. And what I want to do is I want to draw a circle. Again, this is not the final, but I just want to make sure that when I put the biscuits, where I put the biscuits, aren't going to interfere with the edge of the boards after I cut them off. And again, this is the bottom side up, and I'll explain that later. So I'm just going to put that in the middle. find out about where that center is. I'm going to move this board over a little bit. We'll put them in fairly far on the edges. We'll come in about here. This is not an exact science as far as measuring goes. The biscuits are mostly for alignment. When I glue up the boards, it will add some strength, but not as much as you would think. Alright, now I've got those laid out. I'll just do the other one, and I need to sweeten up these edges a little bit on the joiner before I start the glue up. Alright, I've got the boards laid out on the tabletop again. I've passed them through the joiner. As you can see, my joints are nice and tight without any clamps. The whole idea behind this is after I reinforce this with biscuits, I clamp it up. I don't want to have to apply clamping pressure to close those joints. Let me show you my procedure for cutting biscuit slots and getting this glued up. Alright, let me show you how I cut slots for the biscuits. What I want to do is I always have a reference face. A reference surface, so I'm going to use the flattest thing in my shop, which is my table saw. I'm going to put the show face against that. I'm going to use my rip fence to help back this up when I plunge in. So I want to keep this flat on the table saw. I'm going to bring this in, give me a stop, lock it down. I don't like to use these fences on this. I've been using this for almost 20 years now, and I just find it to be really inaccurate. So when I push this down here, hold this down here, I've got a nice flat spot, and it's always going to be referenced on here. The biscuits, again, are just to align this to help with glue up, so that's what I want. You can also see I've cobbled together something here for my dust collector to help get the chips away, and this setup works pretty good. I've done it a bunch of times, and you know, we'll continue to do that. I'll just continue to do this on the other boards, and then we'll glue them up. Alright, I've got my boards all laid out, ready to have the biscuits. But if you're not familiar with biscuits, there's little compressed beech oval-shaped discs, and these are going to go into the slots that I put in here, and then they're going to mate with these. I'm just going to glue it all up, put it down the clamps, and get it nice and flat that way. So I've got all my stuff laid out. I've got my clamping scheme ready. I've got all my clamps. I've got a big bowl of biscuits. I've got some water in case I get too much glue squeeze out, and a full bottle of glue and a glue brush. Again, I'm using my table saw top as the flat reference. It's all about keeping a flat reference space whenever you do anything like this. So I'm ready to go. First thing I do is I'm going to put some glue on the edge and just roll it out. Make sure I get some glue down in the slots. Some guys use their finger for this. Myself, I don't like to. I think it's a little messy. But, you know, to each his own. Make sure you get a nice coverage of glue on all this. Squeeze out is okay because we will get rid of that later. Shove the biscuits in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close these up, make sure that the ends of these are nice and aligned. And you get some squeeze out, that's okay. The flatter these boards are when I glue them up, the easier it will be to sand when the time comes. Now, so I haven't applied a lot of pressure on it. I just want to close the cap on it. But check how flat these are. The straight edge. There's a little bit of a bow to the middle. What I'll do, take another clamp. Put it in the center. And I can use this lighter duty clamp here because, again, just applying enough pressure to, and now I've gotten rid of that bow, so once I get to that point, I really don't want to mess with it anymore. I'm going to do something here that a lot of people are going to go, what are you doing? All this glue squeeze on the top, I don't have a problem with wiping it off with a damp sponge, simply from the fact that I'm not putting enough water in there to loosen the glue joint at all. But I need to clear that glue out so I can make sure that I'm flat. And those joints are tight. And again, I don't want to have to spend 3 days sanding this all down. I'm not worried about the glue squeeze out underneath, just on the top. I'm pretty good with my sanding to the point that I don't have to worry about getting a spot where the glue was. There's also going to be an oil finish on here, and I don't have to worry about stain penetrating. Oil won't penetrate either, but again, I've been doing this system for 20 years, and I've never had a problem with spots from the glue. Again, a quick check to make sure the board's flat. That's nice. That's really, really nice. Alright, and I'm going to set this aside, and well, so next morning I take the boards out of the clamp. They came out very, very nice and flat. Next thing I have to do is figure out where I'm going to cut this. I'm going to put these two sides together, and I'm going to take my trammel, which was the rough dimensions. Actually, I'm going to use this. It came out pretty close to, I'm going to end up going about 4 to 8 inch table. But I need to mark the center of this board roughly. 55.5, 27.5. Just want to make sure that these boards are where I need them to be. Again, this is the back of the unit. Okay, that's good. I'm going to leave them in this orientation. One of the problems I'm going to have is when I want to make this round, I can either make two halves of the round, or do the whole thing as one big round table. Just to uncomplicate the process, since I'm going to use a router and a jig to cut this along with the jigsaw, I'm going to join these two boards together temporarily. I've decided to use pocket screws. I'm going to put just a couple in here to hold these two pieces together while I do this whole process. That'll make sure that everything is round. All my alignment needs to be exactly where it is. The small holes that are going to be caused by the pocket screws on the edge, I can fill those in. I'm not worried about it, but I think that's the best way to do this, again, to ensure the tabletop is completely round when it's put together. So let's do that. All right, I'm just going to put two pocket screws in each end of this, and I'm lucky enough to have this small one here. I'm going to get them relatively close to the end, but obviously not where I'm going to cut the circle. So I'm just going to clamp this down. The other side, and then remember this is on the other side. I'll do the other side, and then I'll screw these boards together before I cut. All right, well, I'm ready to put the screws in. I've already put one on the other side. Basically what I've done here is I've clamped these together to make sure they're nice and flush, and the joints are pulled together. So I don't want to have to use a screw to do that, but they're pretty close already. So I'm just going to drill this, screw this in. These two boards are joined. This will give me a very nice foundation to cut the circle on without having to worry about two halves of the circle. Again, a whole circle is much easier to cut than try to get those two to line. I'm getting ready to rough cut the tabletop. I can actually go right along the line because this line is about 3/32 of an inch away from where the final dimension is going to be, so I'm fine with that. So I said I can cut right along the line. Got my jigsaw set up, and I'm ready to rock. Alright, so there we go. I'm going to rough cut this, and going to get ready to take the router, the trammel. I have to build the jig yet. It'll take me a few minutes. Very simple jig. bore a hole here, which again will get filled in, and then make this perfectly round. So it actually came out pretty good the way it is. So, but no, we'll straighten up all these. What I've got here, this jig, again, very simple. It's just a piece of wood that's attached to my router base. Put a hole down here. I've got a 3/4 inch bit in here, straight bit. Distance between this and this is 24 inches. So all I have to do is I'm going to put it in this hole right here. I'm going to screw it down, make sure it spins a little bit, and then I'm just going to cut around the edge. It's probably going to take me about 2 or 3 passes, but this is pretty effective. I've done it before. I probably should make a permanent jig to do this, so, but not today. All right, as you can see, I've got the jig attached to the tabletop. Again, this is the bottom, so we're going to start kind of giving it a dry run, making sure I've had enough cord. I put some spaces underneath there to elevate it off the tabletop, so when I get to these edges, I'm not going to hit this. So I said I'll do it about 2 or 3 passes, taking off a 1/4 inch or so at a time. So, all right. There you have it, perfectly round table. Nice and clean corners on that. Check for measurement real quick across the middle. And, 48 1/16, but 48 1/32, which is fine. This is not an exact science from the top, so it's very close, and I'm very, very happy with the way this has all worked out here. All right, well, I've still got the tabletop glued together, joined together, I should say, with those pocket screws. And I want to scrape the top a little bit. I've got a nice sharp card scraper ready to go doing that. And one thing I don't want to do at this time is I do not want to flatten this middle joint. I'm going to do that when the table's together and everything's done, so I can make sure that I've got a nice seam, very flat seam going all the way across that tabletop. So again, I just want to scrape this and make sure all these are nice and level. Glue up came out pretty good, but there's still a couple rough spots. There always will be. So. Process can take a while, so make sure you flatten these joints. Nothing beats a nice, sharp card scraper to do this. You could be here for hours with sandpaper. It just isn't worth it. Get yourself a card scraper. Learn how to sharpen it. Learn how and when to use it. It's become a big time saver for me. So I'm not going to let you sit there and watch all this. What I do is it's going to take me about a half hour or so. But when I get done, both sides, except for the seam, will be perfectly flat. So, all right. So after about 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, somewhere thereabouts, I've managed to get all the uneven parts out of this panel. Both sides of it are really nice. It's really flat. I checked it, and I'm very happy with the way it came out. The glue lines are, I mean, you can tell the difference between the different pieces of wood, but the glue joints themselves are nice and tight, very flat, and it came out very well. So next time I'm going to start doing the bent laminations for the bottom rails underneath, which is going to be fun considering the size of them. We're going to have to go all the way around like this. I have to make 2 of them, and again, it'll be fun. That's probably going to be the most fun I'm going to have on this project, is doing the lamination. So, all right.